Thank you. Mr Madden.
Thank you, President. And I too commend Mr Barton for this very important motion that he's brought to this House. And I'd also like to thank Mr Limbrick for relating his very personal story. It takes a lot of intestinal fortitude to relate such a personal story, a part of your life, in such a public forum as this. And I thank him for that contribution. We don't have to look far from our own front doors to see the terrible plight of people experiencing homelessness in our communities, and some are obvious, but others not so. In Melbourne, and indeed our hometowns and everywhere worldwide, the perception is that of those that we see shivering on the streets in these cruel winter months is all there is to see. And for many, sadly, they have become desensitised to the plight of people less fortunate than them. The media and talkback radio is full of people saying, just get rid of them, get them off the streets. It's all their own fault anyway. People have got their own right to make their own choices. They are the result of their own choices. Such an attitude is a terrible indictment on the humanity of our society. There are others who are not so obvious. The men, women and children that are lucky enough to find a bed in nightly crisis accommodation, but filled with that sense of dread that tomorrow night they might not be so lucky. The women and children living in a family car, forced to park each night at a park somewhere, mum barely able to sleep, ever on watch to protect her children in such a dangerous scenario. This is becoming, unfortunately, an all too familiar circumstance when women become the victims of acrimonious family breakdown, or if they are fleeing a violent relationship. Older women particularly, retirees, are also the victims of this sorrowful failure of our society to look after those in need. No longer able to afford their home or rental accommodation after their husband or partner passes away, members of a proud generation used to sticking it out and not wanting to be a burden on their family or friends. Another reason that older women are adversely affected is because the gender pay gap does not end when women leave work. In fact, it worsens. With women in Australia retiring on average with 40% less superannuation than men, they live longer and have less. It's a clear example of how so many forms of oppression intersect. Young men and women, middle-aged and older people in our community, family companion animals, none are immune from the sudden or slow change in circumstance that can see anyone find themselves without safe, warm shelter. That consistency of at least, no matter the circumstances, that you are safe with a roof over your head. The needs are as varied as the underlying reasons. Many are struggling with their mental health or trying to rid themselves of drug use and dependency, and they require extra care and consideration. There have been many inquiries and the input of an array of NGOs and charitable organisations, all working extraordinarily hard with limited funds and even more limited resources. Imagine being the person who has to turn a mother and children away, out onto the street because you simply don't have the room. The emotional toll on those people should be heard too. All too often we hear the stories of people experiencing homelessness or women fleeing domestic violence who are finally given the choice to have a roof over their head. The only catch being they have to separate with their companion animals. What a terrible choice to be faced with, being made to choose between safety and the one comfort and loyal constant that you have had. I believe that we have a responsibility to do better as a community, that Victoria has a chance to lead the way, and that we need to look beyond what it costs in dollar terms to implement the changes needed to alter this awful situation, and to look at the cost to the lives of these people, the cost to our measure of humanity. I will support this motion, and I sincerely hope that this inquiry will look at all the ways this issue is being dealt with around the world and to put the best of them together, because that is our responsibility to them. Thank you.